Hey guys, welcome back for another video. Today, I finally have a review of my new Polk Audio LSiM707 series main tower speakers. I've got a lot of talking points here. I'm going to make sure I don't miss anything. I'm going to be directly comparing them to what they just replaced, and yes, they are already sold, my Klipsch reference series. I was planning on just auditioning these when I got them. You might have seen the video from a couple weeks ago when I did the unboxing, and caught an awesome sale. Couldn't pass it up. Didn't know if I would like it. I've never heard these before, right? As soon as I turned them on, the Klipsch were for sale. It was that quick. I like this overall sound, spoiler alert, better than even the RF series. It's not until, if you're in the Klipsch world, you get to the Heritage series with the true horn drivers that real sweet music starts to play. This just blows the normal Tractrix horn sound out of the water. I don't care what speaker it is. Anyway, on to this review. So, first and foremost, they are large and in charge. They're not only large size-wise, depth and height, they're actually fairly narrow, but they're over 100 pounds apiece. My suggestion is get some furniture sliders. They're cheap. A pack of them are going to cost you about $5 at Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, whatever. Makes it super easy to move these around and get them in the right position. And I do have a video coming next on specific positioning, and it is worthwhile, especially with these guys. So we have a four-way design. We have what's called a ring tweeter. This is not a soft dome tweeter, and it is so much better, especially for music, to my ears in this room than anything else I've heard. It is so natural. It's not lacking. It is not rolled off. There is plenty of high end beyond my hearing, and it is at just the perfect level. This whole thing is coupled to the mid-range driver. Now there are four distinct, separately sealed sections in each cabinet. Each bass driver, which is a 6x9, very deep bass driver, has its own separate and ported enclosure. The bass ports are down on the bottom of the speaker, and they have that special Polk funnel technology where it's not just a straight port, the air is directed 360 degrees out each port for just perfect distribution. Each driver has its own completely separate section, and then they have a mid-bass, a dedicated mid-bass driver. And likewise, it has its very own section that kind of goes up towards the top here. This mid-range driver is technically in its own section, but it's a sealed unit that goes back in a tube. It looks like kind of like a bass port, but it's sealed, so it's in its own tiny little enclosure. And then the tweeter, of course, is sealed in the back. So you have a rock solid cabinet. This thing, it has no resonance. I mean, that's the bottom line. You have a gloss finish on the front, so should you wish to run them without grills, it is a beautiful presentation. It is a fingerprint magnet all over, I have to warn you, but it looks gorgeous. I prefer the grills on just for the more subdued look, but either way, these look beautiful. The logo is down at the bottom, which I think looks absolutely fine. No reason to do anything with this, unlike the center channel, which I covered up and made disappear because that was right under my television and was very distracting to my eye. But I love the way it looks. The rest of the unit is finished in satin, so it's anti-reflective, which works really well again on the center channel speakers. You don't get any reflection from the television if it's really close like mine is. And this is in the what's called midnight mahogany. It has a very subtle red hue to it. And I'll try to pick that up in some B-roll for you, because when, especially with outside light, if I have my drapes open and it's midday and there's a lot of natural light coming in, you can see it very easily. When it's darker, this just looks black, but it's a nice anti-reflective satin finish. The bottom is high gloss, and that is a plastic. It also has integrated spikes and rubber feet, so you can use them on whatever floor surface you need. You don't need any isolation platform. They are also all four very adjustable with about 1.5 inches of vertical lift on every corner. Works very well. My one and only gripe, at least so far, maybe in 6 months I'll have another one, but right now, only one. They're very inefficient. They're rated at 88 dB. I have a sneaky suspicion they're less than that. I did have to upgrade. If you might have seen my other video on the monolith, I did have to push more power to them, but it was well worth it. Brought everything out in them and they sound great as long as you have very significant power. If you have a tiny little 10-watt tube amp, don't expect any greatness. You're probably going to want 40 or 50 if you're pushing tubes. If you're solid state, even if you're class AB like I am, you need a couple hundred minimum, seriously, unless you never play it more than comfortably loud. I'll say that. At low volumes, at mid volumes, it still clears a bell, images perfectly, there's no coloration, great response. You just need the power if you want to crank it up. It also did help a little bit, even at moderate levels, with the dynamics. That could be them breaking in though. I have about 20 hours on them of break-in, of listening critically, of just playing movies and music here during the day when the wife's at work. So they are slowly changing, and a lot of people say these need 50, 60 hours of break-in to fully get there. So I don't know exactly how much that's coming in, but it is tangible. You can definitely hear it, especially in drum kits. It's very noticeable. So if you're wondering what made me immediately sell the Klipsch, and I gave the guy a great deal. Basically, I rented them for free for 10 months because I got such a great deal on them new, because I'm a savvy shopper, just like these. I enjoyed them for absolutely no money. That worked out. And the guy that bought them, happy as a clam. He's just getting the home theater bug. This was his very first purchase of any equipment, didn't even have a receiver yet. So I schooled him, told him what to do from here on out, and I let him come in here and we plugged them in. So after he bought them, he could demo them, and oh, the smile on his face, it was ear to ear. So he's gonna have a great time with them, hopefully for a while at least. But I didn't demo these for him, didn't want to kind of throw the wet blanket, because the sound difference is day and night. These are the first speakers ever that I have heard that sound great with zero processing. So far, I haven't even run room correction. I haven't run YPAO. I've done nothing. No EQs, no nothing. Just physical placement. I've been running on pure direct this whole time, which means it takes the signal from the input, throws it directly into the amplifier. It even turns off the front display so you don't have any RF coming off the other circuitry. It shuts down everything in the receiver and just runs pure signal out to the amp. These sound amazing. They sound better than the Klipsch did, fully set up with all the processing and the room delay and the EQ and all that on. I'm not kidding, it's that big of a difference. They sounded that way, thrown straight up against the wall, zero toe in. I was just planning on running them in, right? I just set them up, pushed them out of the way, plugged them in, turned it on, and was instantly in awe. Everything was a step up. The fullness of the sound. When people, I have a little beef with the terms that audiophiles use. I really don't consider myself an audiophile. I'm an enthusiast, a lover, a tinkerer. I love upgrading and improving and all that kind of stuff, right? But I'm not out there to throw 50 grand, 100 grand, 500 grand at audio equipment. I have no interest in that. I think diminishing returns kick in pretty darn early, but I'm not exaggerating when I say if I had paid double what I did, I still would have been happy. I'm not kidding. These sound great. from the bottom to the top. They have such low bass extension. A couple different times I had to go and make sure that I had pure direct on, and I had to make sure I unplugged my subs because I thought they were playing. It goes that low, and it goes so low. These are the first speakers ever I've had, at least, that you can set on large with zero bass management and turn them to full concert volume. Running my monolith amp, full volume. They don't even breathe hard. They just hit deep, deep into the 20s. You can feel the bass and you can hear every octave. They don't go as low as these. They certainly don't go into the teens, and they don't have nearly the impact that they do even below 50, right? But it's there. It's very even. If you like a musical sound, it's kind of the beef I have with audiophiles and their terms, because it's partially that I haven't experienced exactly what they have in these, insane systems to know what they're putting that term to, but I do think they just make stuff up in some cases. But I can tell you flat out, until now, I didn't have a concept of what musical meant. These are way more musical. And here's what I mean by that. One of the big differences, when you're playing a movie in a home theater and when you're using a center channel speaker, I think everybody knows what that sound is like. You're sitting there, you're watching your movie, and the sound, the dialogue, whatever, is coming out of that center channel. You can pinpoint it, you know exactly where it is, and that sound is emanating right there from the front of the speaker, right? That's the way every movie with a center channel sounds, because you've got basically a mono signal. You got one speaker or set of speakers producing that sound. Everybody knows what that sounds like. That's not musical. It might sound great, might be nothing wrong with it whatsoever, but it's not realistic. For realism, you need a 3D image. You need depth to the soundstage. When you're running a center channel speaker, or many other 2-channel stereo speakers, you have a flat soundstage, and that's exactly what I had with the Klipsch, and that's exactly what I've had or heard from most other speakers when I've demoed them or auditioned them. And that depth was one of the big things I was looking for to upgrade. If you might have seen my video when I upgraded the receiver, the depth was, I didn't know what was controlling my lack of depth, and it wasn't the amplifier, it wasn't the processor, the receiver. Didn't do anything. It was the speakers all this time. So what these gave was an immediate and very clear depth to the soundstage, meaning you don't even have to close your eyes with these. You can be just staring, in my case, at the fireplace or the center channel or the TV or whatever, or you can close your eyes, and you can hear and sense the real depth to the recording, if the recording has it to begin with. Not all do, of course. But for example, if you're listening to a jazz quartet or an orchestra or a singer with background singers or backing instruments that have feet between them, it's like they're in front of you. You can hear that something is here and something is way back there behind it. And I can hear when something is right here, like it's standing on my fire, like a singer is right here standing in front of my fireplace, and I can hear a stand-up bass that sounds like it's in my closet 5 feet behind it. It's that real. That's depth, and that's what makes it musical. When you can reproduce that, and you can only reproduce that with 2-channel stereo, you got it. And these have that in spades, even in this terribly designed room. So one other thing to note, the setup for these was partially very easy and partially quite difficult. Comparing them to the Klipsch, which use horn-loaded drivers and they're high-end, those things were like a laser beam. Using the direction of those to set your toe in was cake. You could turn it just a couple degrees and I would just sight down the side and hit a spot on the couch. It was a breeze. I mean, you were right there, you had a nice solid center vocal, and then it would spread out, and it was extremely easy to hear that difference on the Klipsch. These were very hard. They also don't like much toe-in at all. You probably can't tell here, but there's only about 15 degrees of toe-in on these, and they're crossing about 2 feet behind my listening position. So if I'm in the chair, where they intersect is behind my head. And that's fairly typical of speakers. The Klipsch wanted to intersect a foot in front of my head for the same type of centered vocal image and good soundstage. Soundstage is about equal. Once you get these dialed in, which was a little difficult, the soundstage is about as wide, and I think this has more to do with my room because I'm barely, well, just under on this side, 2 feet from the back wall. This is not optimal for imaging, but I have no choice. Where I'm sitting right now is where we walk through the room. So the wife already bitched about how far out I have them. I think many of you are going to relate to that. And I told her they're actually about 3 inches further out than I had the Klipsch. I told her, oh, these are exactly where the other ones were. They could probably stand to be a couple feet more out in the room and I would have a much better image, but it's not in the cards. Not going to happen. The other thing that's interesting is these really like to be wide apart. And I think that has mostly to do with how many drivers and how far spread apart they are, because what happens is the Klipsch only had 2 8-inch drivers and the tweeter. Really about half the physical spread of where the sound was coming from. So that's a much smaller point of origin for the sound. What happens when you have a larger origin, or if it was a line array which went all the way to the ceiling, a solid wall of sound, you have to be farther back for it all to congeal and hit you at the same time. If you were sitting just a couple feet from these, well, your ears are really close to here and twice as far down to there. So as you back up, it all equals out. And that really made a difference. I have 2 positions where I can set things in this room, either where they are now, which are 11 feet apart with 12 feet to the seating position, or I can swap the sub, swap my AV cabinet, and put them 8 feet apart with 11 feet to the listening position. And that killed the image. It was just off. I could not dial it in. Even pulling them way out into the room just to see, they didn't like it, period. Put them out here, perfect. So you do need some width for these guys. And that's probably true of any speaker that has so much verticality to the physical driver layout. If you listen to very dynamic songs, a lot of people say that Klipsch gives you that live sound and it's very lively and dynamic and hard-hitting, and that is true. Here's the thing. Live sound can mean different things. These also give me a very live sound. I've spent a lot of time in my earlier career around audio, working audio booths, setting up stages, setting up orchestras, all that kind of stuff. This gives an actual live acoustic, you are listening to the instruments themselves in person type of sound. Klipsch give the live concert amplified in-person sound. Very different things. These have such an integration and such a coverage of the frequency range with no subs, just 2 speakers on their own. You can listen to any kind of music, from the deepest bass tracks and techno to classical to especially jazz. But the more you listen to dynamic things, anything with hard-hitting drum kits, and especially the kick drums and the snares and anything that punches in the mid bass, these things just come out and whack you. That's why I had to make sure that I didn't have my subs on. They hit that hard. Now you do have to turn them up to get that, but here's the thing. You turn these up, you keep turning them up, you keep giving it more volume, they don't care. They don't hurt you. They don't say, hey, I've passed my magical listening point. A lot of speakers that I've heard, especially the Klipsch, they have a certain volume that they like to live at, right? Try this sometime. Whatever speakers you have, if you haven't already figured out your spot, listen at your normal listening volume and then try a little bit lower, a little bit higher, a little bit lower still, a little bit higher, and just listen if you can hear anything different come out in the music. If you hear details, if you hear a difference in your soundstage, you're probably going to find a point where one certain volume sounds better overall than the others. And it's going to depend on how the speakers are integrating into your room, how they're pressurizing it, but there's going to be a certain point. These don't seem to have a magic point. They just equally keep getting louder and stay just as clear. Nothing is exaggerated, nothing drops out. The biggest difference, and this is just the high ends. Now, I never had a problem with the Klipsch sound. Even these latest generations where they've made all the improvements to the track tricks and made them less shrill and less harsh. The old ones, I don't even like listening to, even at moderate volumes. But these current ones, hey, they sounded really great. Obviously, I bought them, loved them. So much better. Zero fatigue. And this is how I noticed. After a couple hours of just listening here at very high, higher than I usually listen to volumes because I'm just enjoying the hell out of them. I'm going track after track after track, listening all kinds of different things, going through setup, trying to break them in. A couple hours had gone by. I turned the system off, sat down at my desk. I had no fatigue in my ears. Nothing. I mean, it was like I hadn't been listening to anything at volume. Day and night. The Klipsch would, even after a movie, after one movie, now usually I could binge watch like, all the Avengers in a row, but after one movie, I'm done. It wasn't something that I paid attention to, like thought, oh man, wow, my ears are really hurting. Nothing like that. But I didn't feel like watching anything else. I didn't feel like listening to more than a few songs at a time. And that's why. And it hit home when I demoed the speakers for the guy that bought them. We cranked it up, not even to full volume, cranked it up a lot, demoed a whole bunch of different songs. And when they would get to volume, the highs would almost sound like a reverb in your ears. It was I'm not sure what the descriptive term is for it. I'm going to call it a shrillness, but it wasn't like the music itself was shrill. It was like an effect. It was like a harsh ringing effect, kind of like I had walls right here on the sides of my head, but only when you turned it up. And these have none of that. Just perfect top end sound. But again, not rolled off. This is not lacking. It just sounds right. It's just my taste, I guess. So there you go. There are my thoughts on these. At least so far. Like I said, they're still breaking in. They are still continuing to improve. It's going to be a few weeks before I can really get 50, 60 hours out of sound because quite frankly, I like quiet when I work. So it got kind of old jamming out here while I'm trying to work in the office during the day, and I don't do it while the wife is home. So we're just going to use them normally. I have a couple more videos to do, and then I can just, watch movies like normal. I've just watched a few here for testing, but haven't really gotten back to normal. That's it. Hope this helps somebody. If you can find a deal on these, run, don't walk, run and get yourself a set because they are truly speakers that you are going to keep for a very long time. Even when and if I get better speakers, I do not see myself selling these. Partially because I got such a great deal, but mostly because they are just great speakers. See you guys next time.